on today's episode of the Mick Tully Show on Woma TV, I am blessed to have my dear friend John Kennett, right? This guy is a star. And as we get talking, you'll understand why. And before we say anything, he's just getting ready for the new Last Samurai movie, Part 2. That's what the hair thing's going on, right?
Yeah, it's all about the costume, the look.
Hey, you know, konnichiwa. So you're staying in character here. Right, so John, we're going to start at the beginning because that's always a great place. Mm-hmm. And I use that line all the time, but do you know what? It's a great opener. How'd you get started in martial arts?
I got started in martial arts as a kid, doing karate, taekwondo, like a lot of kids do, and then just fell in love with it.
And where was this?
I was in the 4th grade, so it was probably about 94, maybe right. 94, 95. And
wow.
Did taekwondo with at a kind of a family school all through high school. Started picking up other things in there. Went to the academy with Greg Nelson. I worked for his brother, taught at his brother's, and his brother's wife owned a school, and so
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
right.
And so I worked for Greg's brother, and either him or his wife at the time would bring me over to the academy sometimes, and that's how I got introduced to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's how I got introduced to Thai boxing, a little bit to Kali. And then just kind of kept going from there. Joined the Marines after high school, kept training out in California, and then just came back. And
where were you training in California?
Little places mostly. I'd bounce around. We never had a regular enough schedule to commit to one school.
Yes.
And so I'd just kind of pop into different places. Found there's a guy who taught Thai boxing at a taekwondo school in Oceanside, so
right.
I'd go down there, except we spend most of our time training on the beach, which sounds really nice, but that dude's sadistic.
Really?
But then we go up different places doing jiu-jitsu. They got jiu-jitsu, boxing, everything around there, so we just bounce around. And
when you're at Greg's, how did you find it? Because the academy it's a grinder, right?
You got to work. I mean, you really have to work. And shortly after I got out, I started going back there. That was the first place I went back to after I got out.
Right.
And I would go in the morning, and I was like, I want to train with the fighters, and I'd done some fighting out in California, but yeah, it's if you go there, you work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've, but the skill level is top notch. I mean, they have just some of the top competitors.
There's some world class guys there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Greg himself is no slouch.
Yeah, I mean, he's all right. If you're in that sort of perfectionist, unbeatable human being type of thing, he's all right. He's all right.
Yeah, he's a phenom, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, you'll see him go, and he's not much. I'm not very big, but he's about my. He might even be a little smaller than me, but you'll see him throw guys around and keep guys down there.
He's up 5'6", something like that. Is he?
Right around there, 5'6". I'm 5'7", so yeah, he's probably about 5'6". But he's just a force for you. As soon as he gets a hold of you, you're done.
Yeah, you see, Greg Nelson's one guy I want to get hold of because his Thai boxing's awesome, his karate's awesome. Now, to interview, trust me. I've worked out on a guru down in Santo Seminole with him, and he's like Rick Young. If you trap or anything with this guy, the minute he puts his hands on you, your life flashes before you.
Done.
And, in my case, there wasn't anywhere near the amount of naked women that I thought there was going to. When you have that retrospective of your life like that, you went, I was convinced there was more hot.
You want it to happen again. You're like, let's do it again. And then it's just done.
Right. So you mentioned the military, right? So obviously, if I say a question you can't answer, for the guys at home, what do you do?
She said, well, obviously I can't talk about that.
You see? Now that's a disclaimer right there. So what got you into the Marines?
General interest. Actually, well, the day after junior year ended, that's when the recruiters can first contact people in the States. So you have to get through your junior year. That first day of summer, they sit down, they just call the list. Everyone at the high school, they just go through and the recruiters
So how old are you then?
17. I was 17.
Jeez,
and the recruiters called that day, and I picked up the phone, and I've been giving some thought to what I was going to do after high school, college, or what. I was an exceptional student in high school.
Obviously.
Nice bottom third of my class, exceptionally in that quality standard. But the recruiter called and he said, "Hey, my name's Staff Sergeant McLean. Would you be interested in sitting down and talking about the Marines?" And I went, "Yeah."
Let me just stop there. Saffron McLean.
Staff Sergeant McLean.
Saffron McLean sounded like this chick that I met once. And I was like, your name's Saffron McLean. And I'm like, you're joking me. You're related to John McLean. I'm a big fan of him, right? So Staff Sergeant McLean rang you, right?
Yeah, and I said, yeah, sure. And he was surprised because obviously it's not a cold calling those lists it's rough. I'd be back on recruiter's assistance a couple times, and they just like, all right, call this list because they don't want to do it, so make the boot do it.
Yeah.
And it's rough. You get yelled at, and you get all sorts of nonsense going on. And so when I actually just said, oh yeah, sure, he was kind of taken aback.
Yeah, but it's like when the Jehovah's Witness comes around the house and he's like, "Can we talk?" And you're like, "Of course, come on in." And they're like, "Well, we don't work. We're having a subroutine to work for this. Like the flow chart where it's yes or no, and it always goes to no."
Yeah.
And they go, "Yes, well, I don't know what we're doing now."
But that's the great because absolutely come in. You bring them in the living room, and I just start taking my pants off, and
So
it goes well.
Was there any real driving motivation? Was it like like Tom Cruise? Born on the 4th of July, sort of. I want to serve my country, or you just thought?
No, I mean, I've always been very interested in the military. A lot of family in the military,
Right.
And varying wars. It's just kind of not so much in my parents' generation, but going back before that, a lot. And so it was always something interesting to me. I like doing things that are challenging. I like doing things I don't think I'm going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And the Marine Corps kind of fit that list, And I like doing stupid stuff that has a high risk of personal harm, so that sounded good too. But it was after, that would have been June of 2002, so it was after 9/11, it was after things had started, and so it was kind of one of those things I knew where it would go, because also I knew what I'd like to do in the military, and which wasn't be in the band, which my parents thought I wanted to do, because I was a musician.
Really?
Yeah, and they just assumed,
what instrument?
In high school, I grew up playing trumpet and guitar mainly.
Right.
And so I loved it. It was great. And it was pretty good. It was first chair in my bands and stuff. And,
right.
They just assumed that's what I was going to do. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And so, yeah, he just said, well, when did you like to come in? I was like, well, I'm free today. He's like, oh, all right. And so we went down, and they do run through the whole. They have this big thing they do, and it's a big sales pitch, is what it is.
Yeah.
That's all recruiting is sales, and I'm answering all the right things. Okay, yeah, and they've got the little pathways, and he's like, well, once you take the practice test, the ASVAB is an aptitude test you have to take, and you have to score a certain level to qualify for jobs, or to even get into the Marine Corps. You have to score on a certain level. And so I took it, and he was like, oh, well, you did really well. Well, what job do you want to do? I was like, infantry. He's like, are you serious? I was like, no. So, yeah, and I decided then, I was like, this is what I want to do. My parents were not on board with that. You can't enlist until you're 18. I had one more year of high school to finish anyway.
Right.
And you have to have a high school diploma to enter the Marines. So I wasn't planning on not going to high school, but finishing it.
Yeah.
So I just, but I decided, that's what I want to do. And my parents, I was going to Germany that summer, just to walk around people. And they said, okay, well, we're not going to sign for you to enlist early, but if you go to Germany for, I forget how we were there, like 4 weeks, and you come back and that's still what you want to do, because they thought, like, if you go and experience freedom and all this fun stuff you could do if you went to college, then he's going to come back, he's not going to do it. So I went there, came back, said, all right, well, when can I enlist? And they're like, never mind.
Yeah.
So took that off the table. So I turned 18 in January of 2007. A few days after my birthday, I called my recruiter and said, schedule an appointment. I'm going to come down and enlist. Told my parents, hey, next Wednesday I'm not going to be home. I'm going on enlist, and that was it.
Wow. Where were you in Germany?
I was over there summer after my 9th grade year on an exchange program in Leipzig mainly.
Right.
And then I went back a couple years later with, it started off as a group of 6. It was 5 kids, and our teacher just came along as more of our chaperone.
Yeah.
I had him. He'd been my German teacher from 6th grade all the way through high school. It was just
right.
He's a really good friend and mentor. And so he went over there, and he made it very clear to the parents, though. He's like, you know what? I'm not going as their teacher.
Yeah.
I'm just going as a friend. And so we went over there and started with 6, and only 4 of us came back on schedule. It was like, it would be called it Survivor Germany. They just started dropping. Apparently the lifestyle of hostels and backpacking around a beautiful country, eating food and drinking beer, and I'm pretty sure there were girls there.
Yeah,
I think so.
It sounds awful. Germany sounded that awful. I lived there for 5.5 years. That's
Yeah.
how much I loved it.
Yeah.
But it was cool. So when you got in, what was the basic training like? Is it as harsh as?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's not as physically abusive as it used to be. There's no lie that it used to be. They used to beat the crap out of you just all the time. But it's difficult, and the hardest thing that they try to tell you about it. It's very physically demanding. Obviously, there's running everywhere. There's lots of working out. There's lots of classroom time. There's tons of classes. There's a whole giant book, and you have to memorize everything in that book. You have tests on it all the time, and so there's a big academic portion to it too. And then other certain things you have to pass, rifle work, swimming, lots of course order drill, but it's just stressful. And that's what gets people is it's insanely stressful for 3 straight months.
Right.
And that, there's just broken up into different phases, and I think it's changed now. It's different from when I went in 2003. So there's broken into 3 phases, each about a month long, and you get through one, and you feel this kind of sense of accomplishment. You realize you're not even done yet. It gets worse, and it gets more stressful, and the expectations increase. But once you kind of figure out how to play the game, then it gets kind of fun. Right. The first month is awful. It's horrible. I've never seen more grown men just break down in tears in my life. And just we had one guy just lost it, went screaming, running out of the squad bay, out of the little bit, and we're all kind of standing there like, and Joe Instructor's like, well, go get him, in a certain way. I don't know if I can say it. But, so we take off and run and go get him and bring him back, and we had to literally secure him to his bed until he calmed down, and they could go take him to talk to the people.
Private Pile level freak out, right?
Oh, it was not quite that bad. It was lots of, but,
the jelly donut time, right?
But that actually, I think the cycle after, the class after me, when they were up on the rifle range, I think one of the guys actually did shoot people.
Wow.
So it happens. It happens.
So, yeah, for the guy, especially in the UK, what is the Marine Corps is like, compared to the other arms of the military, it's still considered right up there, right? Why is that? What is the role that they play?
The specific role, oddly enough, the role of the Marine Corps traditionally, historically, has been to take over countries. We go in, we take over a country, Army would come in and hold it. The Marine Corps, as far as I know, and I'm very positive about this, but I might be wrong, you never know. The older I get, the more I learn that I'm wrong a lot. That the Marine Corps is never an occupying force until Iraq. They've never been an occupying force. They just went in, took a place over, and got out. Things might take a while. It wasn't so speedy all the time, but they were never meant to be an occupying force. And so the Marine Corps wasn't trained in, like a lot of stuff that Army units are trained in this kind of policing modes and stuff. That's not what they're meant to do.
You're not winning the hearts and minds.
No, that was never the job. And so there was a big learning curve that had to happen in the Marine Corps of, well, how do we do this job now? And we knew how to do it, but it's not the role. And Marines we're trained to be killers.
So where were you deployed?
Iraq.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what was it as hairy over there?
At times, yeah. It's it's mostly boring.
Yeah.
It was, oh my God, so boring.
Every friend of mine that's been in the military will tell me the same thing. It's long periods of boredom, punctuated with some really wild, and they'll say afterwards exciting times, but at the moment they were like, I was just shitting it basically, and it was only my training that got me through, right? Yeah. So that's going to get me onto it. Why Carly? If you go into the Marine Corps, right, which is like, I wouldn't say it would be the most expansive of technique wise. It wouldn't be. It's this shit works. Boom. Right.
Pretty much. In the Marine Corps martial art program, it's a big thing, and there's a belted system for it, and everyone has to train, and especially now they do a lot more of it. But it's mainly that. It's what worked. It's a combative system, and combative systems are designed, especially military combative systems, are designed for military in shape, mostly dudes who are generally pissed off, hyper aggressive. I've got gear on, and I've got 10 more really pissed off aggressive dudes behind me, And it's designed to be used in a combat zone where if you just, I'm going to rip your face off.
Yeah, and all bets are off, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no real repercussions. This is, for me personally, it's one of the things that I've always struggled with. Krav Maga, Systema. Thank God, Systema now you just see it, and this guy's doing Jedi mind tricks.
Yeah.
Like a couple of years ago, I used to see Systema and go, oh, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And now I look at it and I go, unless that guy's got really bad breath or he's Darth Vader, he's doing a stare and guys are dropping. But like with Krav Maga, I can never really work out. You're trying to, thank God most of them aren't that good, but you're teaching technology to normal people that you wouldn't even need in a combat zone. So when you came out, was it like just a breath of fresh air to do Kali?
Well, and I'd done a little bit of Kali before I went in, and I did some while I was out there. I did some bikini Tersha while I was out in California.
Right.
And so I always really liked it, and it was interesting to me. The big draw for me was, in keeping count, but the whole seamless factor of the idea is there's empty hands, there's weapons, there's locking and throwing, but it all goes from one thing to another, and the stick trains, the knife trains, the empty hand trains, this trains that. That to me was really interesting. But I also like it because it can be, if you need it, it can be extremely combat effective. It can be extremely deadly, but the biggest, and I really I started going to the Kali group actually for JKD.
Right.
That's why I actually went back to Rick's school, was for JKD, because I was on a big Bruce Lee kick for a while. I'm always on a big Bruce Lee kick, and so I was like, well, this is the only place you can do it, and it's a pretty good place to do it.
Yeah.
If he's relatively well known, and there's a guy named Dan something he talks about a lot. I think Guru Dan something.
Yeah, I think he knew Bruce.
Yeah, they were.
I have my own theories on that. Don't drive me into that one, yeah?
But so I got interested in the JKD, and then just slowly started shifting over to Kali because of Rick, and his passion for it, but two, the culture that kind of comes with a lot of Kali, not all of it, but a lot of it of just, there's lots of reasons to train, and it doesn't have to be about hurting the other person.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love I love the collaborative effort about it, where it's like we have to work together first to get good, and it's like it's a complete paradigm compared to most martial arts, because you teach a guy front kick, round kick, jab cross, and then you get him to fight somebody else, and then you're surprised that physics works, and then you get guys that come in and they have to work together, get really good together, and then you test it maybe. It's like my dear friend Brendan Westwood's just off camera there, and one of the best things we did today was we were just messing around with a stick and knife, but we weren't trying to kill each other, but we started rolling, making it happen.
You weren't trying to kill him?
No, I wasn't trying to kill him. No, not this time. But when you're doing it and you get to the point where it's going, I'm having too much fun for this even to be a competition.
It's not even training. It's just fun.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So when you came out of the military, what did you get into?
Right away, just back into martial arts and fitness, and then shortly after that, I went to music school.
Right.
So I went to music school to be a film composer. So I studied a lot of orchestration and a lot of orchestral writing and
that's a Renaissance man right there. Yeah, and then work-wise, you went into a completely sort of connected sector, but if you can explain what
little security work.
Yeah,
I did a little security work, and it was mainly I would pick up stuff here and there. I had a couple friends that either I met while I was in or I knew through martial arts that work security, and so I'd pick up little things here and there. Mostly the stuff around the city. Sometimes I'd get to go travel to not very exciting places, but every once in a while. And it was again back to this, very much like combat. There was a lot of boredom. It was a lot of watching preteens do stupid stuff while some singer's on stage, just hoping they're going to throw a bottle that's going to hit me.
Yeah.
Not that they had bottles of anything, because I would have reported that.
Yeah, obviously.
But
it's funny because I've got a friend of mine. I won't mention him by name, but he's like worked. I mean, high end. So it's like he says, the famous people are a bit of a pain in the ass. A little bit. He said, but it's the guys who are like supremely wealthy that you would walk down the street and you wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you spend 23 hours of the day just being bored, standing around. And he goes, and then they'll decide they'll need to go somewhere. It's like a friend of mine, I won't mention who the principal was, but if I say that he plays football and he's very, very well known, and his wife's very well known for being a really bad singer, you'll have an idea. And literally he said the most dangerous thing about working for her was she used to try and test. She'd be like, right, I'm going to go shopping. You go, right, okay, well, where are you going to go? Well, I don't know. And it'd be like, no, we need to know because you're like supremely well known. And she just wouldn't do it. And so she was never on board with it. And it was like, in the end, he left. And it's like he said, he goes, the only injury they had was she opened up the kitchen cupboard once and a bottle of ketchup fell on her head. You know, and it's like he said, he goes, he couldn't help it, but he laughed his head off, right? So what you mentioned going to film school, but me and you have talked about this, right? Because now what you're studying, now this is what I love this.
So right now I'm at the University of Minnesota and I'm studying archaeology and Native American studies.
Wow. What got you into that?
Indiana Jones, you know, or archaeology. As a kid, you just love Indiana Jones, and as you actually study archaeology, you realize it's nothing like that at all. And he's actually a horrible archaeologist. I mean, he's stealing stuff and he's breaking everything, but you know that's cool. He has a nice hat and that's fun.
Yeah, and he was Han Solo.
And he was Han Solo.
Do you know the worst thing about Harrison Ford though is, you know, he got his ear pierced when he was like 65, and you're like, dude, you know, you should be eating Werther's Originals and wearing tweed now, not getting this. So the archaeology, was it just the study of history, or?
It's the interest for me in archaeology is, you know, and in history too, is the process and how did we get here? And I like looking at not just historical events, but there was a specific set of complex causes that led to this event, which then had a specific set of complex effects, which led to another event, which was the cause that led to another event. And that's what's interesting to me. And then just how, you know, we as modern day people got to be here, and the process going through that, you know, how we went from hunter-gatherer people to the rise through civilization, development of agriculture, and you know how the different types of writing were developed. Whether it was developed for economic reasons, whether it was developed to tell a story about lineage, to prove, you know, why you should be king, or you know, in the very unique case of the Romans, writing was almost exclusively used for poetry and telling stories, which didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, very often. Usually writing was developed for political or economic reasons.
Well, you see, this is the thing. So I remember Guru Dan said it once. He said there were, you know, we mentioned Iraq earlier, and then he said, he goes, that's a war zone now. I remember him saying this at a seminar, and he said, but that was where the first astronomers came from. That's where the plough was developed. Mm-hmm. These were the guys who understood agriculture. So he was talking about empires rising and empires falling, and what he said about Egyptians was, he said the Egyptians were smart because they were the first civilization, or they were the first society to realise the power of the scribe. Mm-hmm. There's no point in doing all of this stuff unless you've got somebody documenting it, right? And what's with the Native American? Is that just?
Well, I've always grown up being told that we're part Native American, like that much.
Yes.
You know, recently that might not be true. We found that out. It might not be true.
Not Johnny Depp.
Not Johnny Depp. No.
16th Cherokee.
No.
Yeah.
But it's always just been very interesting to me, and especially, you know, and it's not taught. It's taught horribly in schools. Native American history is taught horribly in schools. The U.S. did, you know, well, and France, England, the U.S., Spain.
We're all complicit with some
horrible
bad stuff, right?
To the Native American people, and we're all living on stolen land. And you know, there's and just this. So it's always been interesting to me, and just the Native Americans as a people, you know, and it's really that term is. I just need to be careful when I say it because people kind of look at it and they go, "Oh, Native Americans are one big group of people," but they're not. There's no one Native American viewpoint. There's no one Native American thing. There more recently, since like the 50s, there are some more kind of pan-Indian movements.
Yeah.
The whole culture around powwow is a pan-Indian thing, but they are they're sometimes related, but very different, unique tribes and groups of people and nations. And they're their own independent nations inside, like inside the U.S., inside each state.
Yeah.
So it's just been a very interesting thing for me to study, because it's a story that's not being told right, and I find something horribly wrong about that.
But it's interesting you say this. We talked about this last night, and you came out with something that just like me personally, I love America, right? And I love Manhattan, and I love the idea about the Manhattan Indians, where they were when the Dutch turned up, when the Spanish turned up, and they were like, "Here, we'll give you all these sparkly pieces of glass."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Yeah, have it, because we don't own it anyway."
Yeah.
And they were so interconnected. They were like, we could walk for 3 generations and never get to we couldn't get to the sea, because they just knew how vast America was, right? But it was, you said something last night where you said that the way that we're taught about it is there was maybe a couple of hundred, and then there was just this void of nothingness. And I think that was the way you explained it.
Yeah.
So can you just expand on that, please?
And you have to go back, this sort of idea that the new world, the Americas, was this empty land just waiting to be populated. It came about because the first contact that came through from Europeans, they would come through and they'd be traders or explorers, and they'd meet people and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And they take off. Well, they brought with them disease, and so those diseases spread incredibly fast, and so vast parts of the population, especially on the coast, were wiped out. And so when more Europeans came back, they would be walking through, especially like the Pilgrims and not the Puritans, I'm blanking on it. But when they came back, they'd be like, "Well, we need to find a place to live." And they'd walk and they'd see these completely empty villages. And they go, "Oh,
awesome.
God cleared this out for us, man." And so that was the beginning of manifest destiny, and so as you kind of get this myth that this was big open space just waiting to be taken, and there's to Perry from Eddie Izzard, like, there's nobody here. Oh, excuse me, there's nobody here, and it just
Eddie Izzard. Beautiful.
It's one of the great.
He's awesome, right?
But that kind of started that feeling. But also, some of the first English colonies that were set up, around Massachusetts in that area, they understood that they were living on someone else's land. They understood that they were guests, and they had good relationship with natives in the area. There was lots of trade. They helped each other. I mean, they only survived because the natives helped them, because the Indians helped them survive and taught them how to farm in the area and be prosperous. But then at some point, and it was really only about a generation, there was a shift in mindset. And to now, because more and more colonists kept coming and kept growing more. So in their area, all of a sudden now they outpopulated some of the Indians in the area.
Yeah.
They kind of said, well, you're not using the land, and for the most part, especially they don't have a concept of they didn't have a concept of ownership of the land. They said, well, the lands, they had boundaries, they had territories, but nobody owned it. It was land to be used by the people, and there'd be areas, it wasn't just one tribe. There might be a hunting ground that was used by this tribe at this time and this tribe another time, right, or at the same time. They had very complicated political relations, and huge the Iroquois Confederacy was originally 5 and then 6 tribes that had essentially a constitution, very strict protocols on how things were done, a checks and balances system to make sure that no one held more power than another.
Jesus.
And that's all just kind of washed over. And they just, the Native Americans of that time, and kind of still, are just pictured as like, oh, they're just wandering around aimlessly on the land, hoping to find some food to eat tomorrow night. But it just wasn't the case.
So what's the plan for the future? Because I tell you what, if you taught history, man, I'll come to your fucking class tomorrow. I'll be told off for being swearing, right? But that's fascinating. What are you going to do?
I'm working on that. That's a very good question, Mick.
Yeah.
That's obviously something I can't talk about.
It's one of those questions.
Because I don't know. No, I'm at an interesting crossroads. I kind of have to decide if I want to pursue martial arts more or keep going the academic route. My big interest in archaeology, besides Native Americans, is actually underwater archaeology, and the specific use of rivers and how river culture is actually. I think, and I know there's some people that agree with me, but I think that rivers have played a much more important role than ocean crossing and ocean travel in the development of civilizations. I mean, England's a perfect example of ways to get around a whole country and move goods very quickly through rivers. The Vikings took incredible advantage of their ability to move upriver very quickly to take places. Things like the Philippines, all Southeast Asia, there's rivers everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and so it plays a very important role. And underwater archaeology becoming a bigger thing.
Man, for a minute I thought you were going to say Atlantis, man, and I was going to go. I'm all off. I'm all off for this.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Is it? I tell you, no, we're going to go for this, man. Do you know what? It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope when you're listening to this that it. First of all, I'm a boring man. So, like, I love history, and the beauty is the more history I learn, the more I realise we don't do anything new. You know, we just 9 times out of 10 we just do bad stuff to people, but in a more effective and economic way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But dude, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks, John.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. How good was that? That was gold, man.